In 2010, a team of Japanese researchers strapped healthy volunteers to an X-ray table and asked them to do something almost nobody in the West has ever had documented on video. They asked them to have a bowel movement in 3 different positions, while a fluoroscope recorded exactly what was happening inside the body, frame by frame, in real time. The sitting position looked like a kink in a garden hose. The squatting position looked like someone had finally straightened the hose out. That image, the kink versus the straight line, is the entire secret behind why a huge share of Japan barely deals with constipation the way the rest of the world does, and it has nothing to do with fiber pills, laxatives, or magic tea. Here's the muscle nobody teaches you about in school. It's called the puborectus, a U-shaped sling that loops around the lower rectum like a sling holding up a hammock. Its entire job is to keep you continent, meaning it stays partly clenched all day so you don't have an accident on the subway. When you sit down on a normal chair height toilet where your hips at roughly 90 degrees, that sling stays half clenched too, because your body doesn't fully know the difference between sitting on a toilet and sitting on a bus seat. The result is a bend in the rectum called the anorectal angle that sits at around 90 degrees. You're not pushing stool down a straight pipe, you're pushing it around a corner. Therefore, the body does what it always does when a straight job gets hard. It cheats. It strains. That straining has a name too, the Valsalva maneuver, where you clamp your airway shut and force pressure into your abdomen to muscle the stool past the kink. It works eventually, but it comes with a cost the toilet industry doesn't advertise. A 2003 study out of Israel, since echoed by the Japanese fluoroscopy work, put actual numbers on that cost. Volunteers using a standard sitting toilet took between 114 and 130 seconds on average to feel fully empty, and most reported needing real effort to get there. The same volunteers using a squatting posture felt fully empty in about 51 seconds, with dramatically less reported strain, less than half the time, a fraction of the pushing, same body, same meal, same day. Nothing new was added. One angle changed. The only variable was the angle of the hips. But here's where it actually gets dangerous, not just uncomfortable. That repeated Valsalva straining spikes blood pressure sharply for the duration of the push, and cardiologists have documented cases of defecation-related fainting and, in rarer cases, stroke, specifically tied to that pressure spike in people with existing cardiovascular risk. It's a big reason emergency rooms still see what older medical literature bluntly calls bathroom collapse. Your bathroom habits and your blood pressure aren't separate topics. They're the same conversation and almost nobody's having it. So Japan built its bathrooms differently for most of the last century. The traditional washiki toilet is a floor-level basin you squat over, no seat, no 90-degree hip angle, no kink. Millions of older Japanese households still have one, often alongside a modern Western-style unit, and public buildings across the country still keep at least one washiki stall specifically because a meaningful share of the population, especially elderly users, finds it faster and easier to use. It's not nostalgia. Cinedefecography studies out of Japan measured the anorectal angle opening from that clenched 90 degrees to roughly 126 degrees in the squat position. That's not a small adjustment. That's the difference between a hose with a kink in it and a hose without one. Now, you don't need to rip out your toilet to get this. This is the part that actually matters for anyone reading this from a Western bathroom with a Western toilet bolted to the floor. A simple footstool in front of the toilet, roughly 7 inches high, angling the knees up above the hips, gets most of that same anorectal angle benefit without changing the plumbing at all. Patent filings for these stools cite the exact same mechanism as the washiki toilet. Raise the knees, relax the puborectolete, straighten the angle, remove the need to strain. It's the cheapest medical device almost nobody in the West ever buys because it looks like a plastic step stool instead of a health intervention. But the stool only fixes the exit. It doesn't fix what's backing up in the first place, and that's where the rest of the Japanese approach actually starts. Traditional Japanese meals are built around a level of fiber. Most Western diets don't come close to matching without a supplement. Natto, fermented soybeans eaten most mornings in huge swaths of the country, delivers both soluble fiber and live bacteria in the same bite. Seaweed like wakame and kombu, folded into miso soup at breakfast, carries a type of fiber that Western digestive systems barely encounter unless someone specifically goes looking for it. Pickled vegetables, a near universal side dish, function as a daily dose of probiotics, doing the same job a $15 gut health supplement claims to do, except they've been doing it at the table for centuries. And the timing isn't an accident either. Many Japanese households build the day around a glass of room temperature or warm water first thing in the morning, before coffee, before food. That's not a wellness trend borrowed from Instagram. It's a direct trigger for something called the gastrocolic reflex, where filling the stomach signals the colon to start moving, and doing it consistently at the same time each morning trains the bowel into a predictable daily rhythm instead of a random back-up guessing game. There's a cholesterol angle buried in the fiber conversation too, and almost nobody connects it to the bathroom. Soluble fiber, the exact kind found in natto, seaweed, and the barley, often mixed into Japanese rice, binds to bile acids in the gut and drags them out with the stool instead of letting them get reabsorbed. Because the liver makes bile acids out of cholesterol, more of them leaving the body means the liver has to pull more cholesterol out of the bloodstream to make replacements. A sluggish, backed up gut doesn't just mean a rough morning. It means less of that fiber ever gets the chance to do that job, and more cholesterol stays in circulation instead of leaving with everything else. Walking plays its own quiet role here too. Peristalsis, the wave-like muscle contraction that pushes waste through the colon, responds directly to physical movement, and Japanese researchers studying elderly populations have repeatedly found that regular walkers report fewer constipation symptoms than sedentary people of the same age and diet. This connects a set of research findings that rarely get put in the same sentence. The same walking habit tied to lower dementia risk in Japanese longevity studies, the same daily movement tied to better blood sugar control and lower resting blood pressure is quietly also keeping the colon moving. It's one habit doing 4 jobs. There's a physical prerequisite hiding underneath all of this that Western health content almost never mentions, which is that squatting comfortably, even briefly, even just on a footstool, requires ankle and hip mobility that a lot of adults have quietly lost by their 40s. Years of sitting in chairs, cars, and desks shorten the muscles around the hip and stiffen the ankle joint. So the same position that a 5-year-old drops into without thinking becomes genuinely uncomfortable for an adult who hasn't crouched all the way down in a decade. Japanese daily life keeps that mobility alive almost by accident, floor seating at low tables, gardening at ground level, the washiki toilet itself, all of it repeatedly asking the hips and ankles to do the exact range of motion that Western furniture spent the last century designing out. The same knee and hip stiffness that makes a low squat feel impossible is often the same stiffness showing up as knee pain on stairs. It's not a coincidence. It's the same joints, just complaining in two different rooms. Sleep closes the loop on all of it. The colon has its own internal clock, more active in the early morning hours for the average adult, which is part of why a consistent wake time and a consistent first meal time train the gut into a predictable rhythm. Poor, fragmented sleep disrupts that internal clock, the same way jet lag does. And gastroenterologists studying the gut-brain connection have found that people with chronic sleep disruption report constipation and irregular bowel habits at meaningfully higher rates than consistent sleepers. The habit isn't glamorous. Go to bed at roughly the same time, wake at roughly the same time, and the colon quietly falls in line with the rest of the schedule. Traditional Japanese households have historically kept earlier, more consistent hours than the average Western household. Dinner well before bed instead of right up against it, which gives the entire digestive tract several uninterrupted hours to finish its work before sleep resets the clock for the next morning. There's also a hands-on technique that shows up across Japanese self-care guidance, a simple clockwise abdominal massage following the actual direction stool travels through the colon, done for a few minutes most mornings. It's not folklore dressed up as medicine. Clockwise abdominal massage has been studied directly, including in nursing and elderly care research, and shown to increase bowel movement frequency and reduce reported straining in people with chronic constipation, likely by mechanically nudging colon motility along its natural direction rather than fighting it. It costs nothing, takes less time than scrolling a phone, and is the kind of habit that survives specifically because it works, not because it's marketed. There's a stress layer buried in here too, and it's the one almost nobody mentions on a bathroom-focused video. Chronic constipation and chronically elevated cortisol feed each other in both directions. High cortisol slows gut motility as part of the body's stress response, which backs up the system, which creates bloating and abdominal pressure, which the body reads as another stressor, which keeps cortisol elevated. That bloated, heavy feeling so many people blame purely on belly fat is sometimes doing double duty as a stress and motility problem stack on top of whatever fat is actually there. The Japanese habits already cover the walk, the warm water, the unhurried squat instead of a rush strain aren't just mechanically better, they're lower stress by design, which breaks that loop instead of feeding it. So none of this is one trick. That's the uncomfortable part for anyone who came here looking for a single hack. It's a stool that costs less than a coffee, a glass of water at a consistent time, a diet with real fiber built into ordinary meals instead of bolted on as a powder, and a daily walk that happens to be doing 3 other jobs at the same time. Stacked together for years, it adds up to a body that empties itself in under a minute without a fight, instead of a body that sits there straining, spiking its own blood pressure, and blaming the coffee. Here's the part that should actually bother you. Straining on the toilet is so normalized in the West that hardly anyone treats it as a problem until a doctor mentions a hemorrhoid, a fissure, or in the more serious cases, a fainting spell that gets written off as dehydration. The kink in the hose has been there the whole time. Nobody checks the plumbing until it backs up, which brings up the only question worth sitting with after this video ends. Not whether you need a supplement, whether the last time you sat down you actually gave your body the angle it was designed to use, or whether you strained through it the way you always have, assuming that was just what it felt like to be a body. Almost nobody ever questions a habit performed in private, alone, every single day of their lives, simply because there's nobody watching to compare notes. A 7-inch stool answers that question for less than the cost of a week of fiber gummies. What's stopping you from testing it tomorrow morning? If videos like this, the quiet, mechanical fixes nobody's selling you because there's no margin in a plastic stool, are useful to you, there's a whole list of them waiting in the next video, starting with the one habit that's quietly wrecking your blood sugar every single morning before you've even had breakfast.